Usually what we do in these master classes is that we kind of go through a psychological exercise. It's like one of the core pieces that I really love in this program is talking about, how do you get to comfort? How do you get through these barriers that where we tell ourselves like, man, I suck at this, or I don't feel good, or I feel uncomfortable, and like, why do I feel uncomfortable? And can we talk about that and have a discussion on that thing? And while I do feel like that's extremely valuable, and I want to do that almost every masterclass at least, or at least very frequently, maybe every other masterclass at least, something came up this week that I thought would be really, really relevant to a lot of you. In the internal team, one of the requests from the product department was, could I give everyone a series of 5-minute tips on like advanced usage of the Fluent Forever app? Can I have, a group of 5 people who are, are engineers or whatever, who have not really gotten the chance to use Fluent Forever to learn a new language that they've never really encountered before? And can I give them 1 tip a day that takes them maybe 5 minutes and allows them to do this thing better? And so I wrote out all this stuff, and I suddenly realized this morning, wait, like this is useful for everyone, not just for my internal team. And also it's specifically about advanced usage. It's about what's the stuff that's non-obvious that, someday we would like to make obvious, but what's the stuff that really isn't obvious right now that the app can do and people should be using, regardless of whether they realize they should be using it or not. And so I have this list of like 15 things, and I thought, why don't we just go through that list? Why don't we talk about each of these things? And as I explain them, the thing I would request is that use the chat area to get more. Meaning, if I start talking about a thing and I'm like, okay, cool, we're done. And you're like, wait, no, you're not done. Like, I have a question about that. Ask that question in chat, I'll see it, and then I'll be able to expand on that particular topic. So this is how we're going to go for some back and forth. And then if there is still time at the end, we'll find out. It's like 15 things. It might be 30 minutes. It might be like 45 minutes. We'll find out how long it takes to get through these. Then hopefully there'll be some time for the Q&A that has come through the community channel in Slack, and we can go from there. So that is our deal. I will see if I can successfully share my iPhone with a cable. This has been an open question of, is this possible? Do people see my phone? I have a thumbs up. Thank God. Okay. And we'll go from there. So topic 1. Topic 1 has to do actually less with the app and more with motivation and goal setting. One of the things that you're getting out of MXU right now is that you have a calendar. Because of your daily touches, it means that there's always going to be this fixed point in your day where you're going to be studying a language, and that is like one of the key aspects of this program that is really valuable. Because when you're doing this alone, it's kind of hard to actually get yourself to go, do your review session, things like that. Nonetheless, like you will actually have to do your review sessions if you're going to get the most that you possibly can out of this program, and then even more so at a point where if you're not using this program in terms of the MXU program. So this first chunk has to do with how do you set up a trigger to get you to do your daily reviews. And the way those triggers work are there's kind of two main ways to play with that. One of those ways has to do with calendars, and one of those has to do with your daily habits. Calendars are the least effective of those two, but they're still effective. And the way calendars work is basically you go in your calendar and you figure out what is an actually convenient time ahead of time. You going through your day and just being like, yeah, I think I'll do reviews sometime is a great way to not do your reviews. You going through your day and being like, yeah, I'm going to add my sentences from the MXU tab on the app at some point. Well, that's also the some point part is the problem there. And so you going into your daily schedule and being like, okay, well, when is this going to happen? Let me block out that time. This is, after work, I get home, 6 p.m. This is the moment that I'm going to spend my 10 minutes or so doing reviews, adding words, etc. Or right before I go to sleep, or right when I wake up, and you actually sticking that in your calendar so it's there, so you see it, so it's a commitment. That has a lot of value. It's actually going to drop the amount of motivation you need to do that habit on a daily basis. The one technique that is more effective even than that is when you link it to an activity you're doing already. And so for a while, I was doing Fluent Forever, my Japanese reviews when while I was brushing my teeth, actually. Like, that was the trigger. I get my toothbrush in my mouth, and when my toothbrush goes in my mouth, I pick up my phone and I hit the review button so that this is at least there in front of me. And that starts that process. And I finish brushing my teeth and I'm tapping on these things, and then I'm done with brushing my teeth and I'm like, well, I'm halfway through my review session. I might as well finish it. These kinds of linked activities are the easiest way to form habits because you already have a habit. All you're really doing is adding to a second habit to that thing. And then let's jump into the app chunk. The chunk that the app can do to support that has to do with notifications. And so if you hit on the bottom right, you hit the settings button. At some point, we actually introduced the ability to customize your daily notification time. There's two options here that I would recommend. One of them is that, like in my case, for instance, I'm doing this when I brush my teeth. I brush my teeth at about 7:30 a.m. every day. And so I would just set that up. And that is a fine option because then you have another signal being like, hey, do it. Whatever. Maybe you brushed your teeth early today and you just didn't get to it or something like that. That works. The thing that I actually prefer is using this as a backup plan. So I use my activity as my target. So this 7:30 a.m. brushing my teeth. And then I know there's another window on my day at about 8 p.m. when I'm probably going to be open and free. And so I use my Fluent Forever notifications to double check. And if I see that notification, I'm like, oh crap, I totally forgot to do that this morning, then this is my backup. And so that's where I tend to set that time. But not a lot of people necessarily know that there actually is a way to set times for notifications. And so that's sort of tip one in the app. Answering Bridget's question about timeline for integrating MXU into Fluent Forever. We already have an MXU tab, and that is kind of the way we would be doing this. If I switch over, right now I'm in Castilian Spanish, but if I switch back to Spanish, Latin American Spanish, then right now this is this Learn tab. This is the thing that many of you have been using. Some of the older folks in MXU may still be using Anki. I'm not sure if there is anyone who is still using Anki. But everyone who's new, I believe, has been introduced to this idea of this Meet the Spanish U tab that shows up in the app. And if not, then reach out to the team to figure out how to get that working. So point number two. Point number two is completely outside of the app. And point number two is, so Bridget, talk to the staff and they can help you get in there. Point number two has to do with goal setting and areas of expertise. You're already getting a lot of this from the MXU onboarding process. In that process, you're going to be talking to people about, you've been talking to your coaches already about why am I, learning this in the first place? Why do I even care about Spanish? Why do I care about, French for the small handful of you who are starting to do the French stuff? You understanding and literally writing down, I am doing this so that I can go travel next year and have a great time on my trip. I am doing this because in my case, like I learned Spanish because my in-laws and my whole extended family on my wife's side are primarily Spanish speakers. And the idea of me showing up to my wedding a few years ago and not being able to speak to anyone when theoretically my whole job is like being good at languages, that would be embarrassing. I would like to not be embarrassed at that event. So I'm going to go learn Spanish. Those are all like fine reasons. I don't know about embarrassment as a great reason to learn a language, but it's why I chose that one. But you understanding why are you doing this thing and actually writing it down so it's somewhere visible, that has value, especially if it's somewhere visible that you can see on a regular basis. If you post this somewhere and say, why am I putting this work in? It's a lot of work to put in. You knowing that has value, you articulating that and figuring out what are the words that I would use to really describe my central motivation for this language, that has value. You spending time to write that thing down is worth it. Secondarily, you spending some time to go through the idea of like, what are the topics that you might want to learn? What are the specific areas of specialty that benefit you, that you want? In my case for Japanese, my topics are, I want to learn anime vocabulary, specifically the vocabulary in the TV series for Naruto. I want to learn food vocabulary, and there's actually a bunch of subcategories there. I want to learn sushi vocabulary, ramen vocabulary, tempura vocabulary. Like food is my whole thing. I have like maybe 10 different topics in food that I care about. I do want to know travel vocabulary. And so me going through and finding what are the possible categories that exist and saying, these are all the ones I want, so that I can help structure my own weekly touches in my case, but daily touches in your cases, saying, hey, like, you know, I've done travel 3 times. I feel like I have some, I could probably do another 10 more there, but I want to switch over. Now I want to talk about ramen. Or now I want to talk about, you know, ordering at my local Mexican food restaurant. And you knowing what you want, it allows you to start having a catalog, and so you can direct your lessons more. When you lean on your coaches for all of this, they're good at that. They're able to handle the fact that you can lean on them. But to the extent that you can direct your lessons and you can direct, you know, what vocabulary you choose, that has value, because it's going to allow you to retain actually more because of the agency that you have there. It is different for a coach to say, all right, you probably should learn this word. It's probably important for the stuff that you said earlier. Is less valuable than you being able to say, hey, coach, I want to talk about this today. The moment that you say, I want to talk about this today, you're going to retain more from that particular session. So that's point 2. Let's talk about some more stuff that's actually in-app. So some of this stuff will be review for some of you, some of it won't. So for the stuff that's review, you just let it go. If there's little pieces that are new, awesome. But we'll kind of go through all of them, so it's comprehensive. First chunk is going to be about the image search engine. There's going to be a few different chunks of this image search engine. So no, let me switch back to Castilian Spanish, because my Spanish has a bunch of words already learned, and it is harder to find things. So if I'm going to jump into, let's say, a vocab and grammar section, I'm going to jump into here. I'm going to learn tierra. And so I jump into here, and sheesh, that is loud. I hope that is not as loud for all of you. In this case, you see the basic image search engine. This is the one that favors ones that were commonly chosen. These are the most popular images that were chosen. For the purposes of when you're just learning pronunciation, for instance, in this basics of spelling section, these kinds of choices are always just fine. The basics of spelling section is choosing kind of weird out there words, which we'll talk about in a little bit as to why we're doing that. But for the vocabulary stuff, when you really want to internalize something, there is value in you spending more time than just the 1 or 2 seconds it takes to choose 2 earth images. Because that time that you're spending is time that you're engaging with what is the right tierra that I really care about? What's the one that's going to ingrain this for me? And all that's really doing is allowing you to giving you an activity that is connecting this word to the meaning of the word. And so one way to spend that extra time is to jump into the Find More section and start playing with this advanced image search. And there's, I would say, 3 different interesting ways to use the advanced image search. The first of those is to search in Spanish. So like up top on the top of the screen, I can switch from Spanish to English. And when I stay in Spanish, I can start scrolling through the Google search image results for the word tierra. And that allows me to see what do Spanish speakers think of when they blog about this word. In some cases, it's going to be exactly what I might expect, which means that the overlap between Spanish and English is roughly 100%. But that's actually not super common. In this case, it kind of is. I'm not seeing a lot that really, you know, shocks me. I guess I kind of see a little bit of a focus on continents that I wouldn't otherwise see, which is to say that I think that most of the time when you're searching, like, let's find out. If I search in English, what I believe I've generally seen is this idea of, look, America is the center of the world. And they tend to use that in the center of a lot of their image search results. And the Spanish one doesn't show that as much. Here's another America one. This one is not. Here's another America one. America, it's like there's just this like America, 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 we're all at the center of the world kind of concept in English. That when you jump into Spanish, that's the only difference I'm slightly seeing, is that there's a little bit more like, hey, here's Africa, like featured much more in tierra. And that's interesting. And when I can find those subtle differences, and when I can spend the time to do that, of just being like, well, what am I seeing here? Are there real differences? That has value because it's making me think about, it's making me engage with the word in a meaningful way. me just sort of repeating the word 10 times, like that's not engaging in a very deep way. This is kind of a deep way of being like, well, can I search for it? Can I think of ways that this could be different? And as it turns out, like actually can see a kind of trend. There's much less America focus in this particular set of images. This one was subtle. Some of them are much less subtle. So that's sort of chunk one, is searching in the target language and seeing what do I see that is different than I would expect. The second one is searching in English. And the English searches are valuable because the internet is way more extensive in English than any other language. For those of you who are learning Spanish, like everyone in this room is learning either Spanish or there's a tiny few who are learning French. You have the benefit of the fact that the internet in those two languages is actually quite extensive. People are in fact blogging in Spanish. People are in fact blogging in French. Whereas when I search for things in Japanese or worse Korean, there's going to be points where the internet is just much more narrow, and so the image search results tend to be much worse. And so when the image search results are not great, you searching in English will allow you to get images that you can't otherwise get. The other chunk that English search allows me to do is if I have associations with this word, you know, tierra for me, what does that mean? What is a personal connection with the word tierra? And, you know, it's, you know, the first thing coming to mind is this ridiculous, you know, trip over the earth with Jeff Bezos. And I just think that's, you know, topical and a little funny, and I want to connect that with this particular concept of Earth. And so I'm going to search for, you know, Jeff Bezos and, you know, space flight. And these are the sorts of searches that you don't necessarily have all the vocabulary to do in Spanish yet. And you spending a bunch of time thinking like, man, how am I going to do this? Is not as valuable as you just being like, no, I think that's funny. I just want to connect it to my word, and let's get some random pictures of Jeff Bezos being ridiculous, and poof, and like now this is my tierra, and so that has some value. English search is, I think, really helpful for finding memes, and so that's what I tend to use it for quite a bit. The other chunk that I think is extremely useful is that English search has the best sources of animations, and so if I look for, you know, Earth GIF, and you just need to use the word GIF, then I will find a whole bunch of animated GIFs for anything I want. And I really like them for learning. The other nice thing about animated GIFs is they go offline much less regularly. So for any of you who have been pretty experienced with the Fluent Forever app, what you'll notice is over time, because we're just storing the links, we're not storing the actual content, some of those images will break over time. And the animated GIFs actually break much less regularly. So I try to actually include these whenever I can because I learn more. The fact that it's moving engages me more. And secondarily, they go offline less often, so I need less maintenance. And so I will frequently just find an animation that I kind of like. And this you know, sun one is kind of cute, and so I'm going to use that one. And so these are a few of the various ways of using the image search engine. Other chunk while we're in the image search area, let's get rid of you know, one of these two Jeff Bezos ones, is this idea of using the draw a picture mode. Draw a picture is so powerful for so many things. The most basic one is Pictionary. This idea of me just being like, okay, well, let's draw a little Earth, and then we'll make the, you know, the thing a little smaller, and we'll make it green, and we'll put a little, you know, America, because that's apparently what, you know, me as an English speaker need to do. This is the worst Earth ever, but sorry. And this worst Earth ever is actually really good, and it's good because it's mine. It's good because I can look at this and be like, oof, that's a terrible Earth every time I see my flashcards, and I can start connecting this concept of, man, I really can't draw tierra as a part of my memory of that word, as a part of this thought of like, how do I represent this image? How do I, like, can I even draw this? Man, this action of drawing this was harder than I expected. That's now part of tierra. And that's super valuable. The other chunk that I can do is I can stick in personal connections here. And I can do them in a few ways. One is I can put this little tiny Jeff Bezos over here. And I can literally write in Jeff. This is a slightly crappy Jeff, but nonetheless. I can put notes in that make this really personal. That includes adding comedy to my stuff, but that also includes things like, what is the part that I'm trying to focus on? How do I direct my attention to the fact that it's the earth the tierra I'm trying to pay attention to, not actually Jeff. And so drawing gives you almost limitless ability to focus on personal things. The other thing that I can start adding in here is, like, let's say I'd taken a trip around the world, and that was my personal connection. Like, that would be actually a more interesting personal connection than this Jeff Bezos stuff. If I really wanted to add a personal connection to this particular content, in the Fluent Forever book, we talk about how adding a personal connection to the either back or front sides of your flashcards has a lot of value, because it accesses this next layer of processing, this idea, this stuff that's like the most personal that your brain holds on to. Let's say I took this particular trip around the world in 2012, and that's my reference. Then I can totally stick in this, I guess the Earth is a blue planet, so we'll do this thing. I can totally stick in this idea of I'm going around the world, and I can literally write in 2012. And suddenly I have the ability to add in personal notes. Yes, I have to draw them with my finger. It's not as extensive as I could do with text, like literally typing out, but it's a personal note. The only thing and so this is going to make this store really, really nicely in my head. Last sort of really nice chunk about drawings is they never go away because they actually are stored. You're never going to have a broken image link with a drawing. And so anytime I can do a drawing, I will go for that thing. The only thing I would warn you about in terms of this personal connection concept, don't put too many English words here. And don't give yourself clues that are so extensive that you're like, okay, well, I basically just told myself the answer. If some, let's say a Spanish coach at some point was like, oh, like, just remember tierra by, like, you have to, like, you tear it. It's like you tear the world, whatever, like some sort of like weird mnemonic. You writing in like tear it, or like tear Shira, something like that. Like you writing in the mnemonic on the front, like this is going to be on the front side of every one of these flashcards. That's going to screw you up. So just be careful that any personal connection things you put in here are vague enough to not tell you what the word is, but help you get to the meaning of the word really rapidly. So this idea of I took a trip around the world in 2012, like that one's good. Me being like, oh, to remember tierra, just remember, you tie ra. Like, no, now I've just given myself the answer. I think that's all the image search stuff I want to do. Beyond, like, actually, there's a lot of image search stuff because a lot of the learning in this app is, in fact, image search. So we'll do more. Next chunk I would say is the use of the photo tool. The photo tool is valuable for a couple of reasons. One, because it's really easy to get stuff to get super personal. And so if I had a globe somewhere in my home, then that's like a no-brainer. Go get it, because that one's yours. Like that's as personal as you can get, with perhaps the exception of a drawing. Like drawings have the extra little personal flair of I did it myself, but nonetheless. The other chunk that these taking photos can do is you being able to do selfies. And so selfies have this value of me being able to, here's my green screen, me being able to sort of say like, okay, no, the tierra is like, it's this is how I feel about the earth, like, wow, like something like that. What is your emotional reaction to that word? Can you hold it in some sort of gesture and some sort of facial expression? And then can you take a picture of like, the earth is so amazing, wow. And then you have this ridiculous photo of yourself that you then use for a part of the word. I would not use like a ridiculous, selfie of yourself as your main image. Like this is not going to tell me what word means at all. But it is going to remind me that like I was teaching a masterclass and I had like tried to make a ridiculous face while I was teaching the word tierra to people. And like that will stick. That will stick really, really, really well. And so as an extra word, as an extra one of your 4 images, I like selfies quite a bit. Especially if you do have some kind of emotional reaction to a particular word, you being able to store that in the form of a photo has a lot of value. The last chunk I would say to talk about the image search stuff have to be about choosing stuff from your library. That allows you to do things like, right now you can't take an image online and then draw on top of it. So let's say you're learning, the word for daughter. Daughter is a word that is used in relations. So like usually you have a mother and a daughter together in the image. And how do you focus on this littler one? Ideally, you'd want to draw an arrow to that thing. And so you being able to search online for, an image of a mother and daughter and like screenshotting it and drawing an arrow to that thing, that's a thing that you can do using this choose from your library functionality. It's clunky, but nonetheless, it's that process of you building out that image is about the same as you drawing, really, in terms of the amount of interaction you get. Secondarily, choose from your library is really, really nice for screenshots from Facebook, things like that. When you're talking about, who's my brother, when I learned the word brother, ani, in Japanese, I got a picture of my brother. I didn't go, searching online for brothers. I got my brother. And so you being able to screenshot and then use those images for this has a lot of value. For any of you on iOS, if you're not familiar with how to screenshot, you hit the volume button and the I think power button generally at the same time. It will flash. You'll have a little screenshot. If you tap on that screenshot, you can draw on it and be like, oh, this part. And you can resize that and say, okay, this is my new image. And then you can save that when you hit done to your photos. And then you can import that in the app. So that's the functionality that I'm using on a day-to-day basis. I think those were all the things in images. Those were all the things in images. All right, we're through 1 through 6. All right, some of these other ones might go faster, but we'll find out. But let me check on questions. So we have already answers to some of these things. And I think let me answer Bridget's question about choosing a GIF and a drawing for each word. I would say every word is a little bit different. I will often default to GIFs. If I see some interesting stuff in the advanced image search, I'll always go there. That's kind of my bread and butter. If I can see interesting differences like that's first. Second, I will often add an animated GIF. Or if there's ever an option for me to do drawings that actually will capture the whole meaning of the word, I'll go there really, really rapidly because I know I'm never going to lose those images because they'll never go offline, and also I know that they're as personal as they can be. So I tend to like those quite a bit. So that one was actually, let me jump back. So loud in my ear, wow. Another chunk here that we'll go on to next have to do with gender mnemonics. Those of you who have read my book, the mnemonics section on gender tends to be one of the parts that stick the best for people because they're like, wow, that's super, super cool. I didn't realize I could do that. But not everyone has read the book. And so I think spending a few minutes talking about that has some value. In Spanish and in French, and we'll only talk about those 2 languages for today, your nouns all have 2 genders. You have masculine gendered words and you have feminine gendered words. And you being able to remember those genders is not always obvious. It is sometimes obvious. It's sometimes like, in Spanish, often words that end in the letter A are feminine. Not always though, but often. Same kind of deal with French. You're going to have sort of straightforward spelling rules that help you remember which gender things are. Rely on those spelling rules when you can. There's no reason to add extra stuff to this and be like, well, I'm going to memorize these crazy images when you could just look at the last letter of the word and remember it. But if you find that you are struggling, and that moment that you find you are struggling is in the review session, which is to say, I learned tierra, I go ahead and I do that. I hit the add images button, I add them to my deck, I start reviewing them. And then as I'm doing my reviews, I hit this question of like, what's the word for this picture? And I have my Jeff Bezos and I have my these animated GIFs and this crazy face. And I'm like, tierra, but do I remember the gender? And that is the next question you should be asking yourself when you're doing your reviews. Do I remember the gender? Don't turn over the card until you check if you remember the gender, if this is in fact a noun that has a gender. And so I can go to this and be like, tierra, I don't remember the spelling rule because I'm new to Spanish, perhaps. It's probably masculine. And then I flip the card, and in the more extensive version of the card, these are just previews, but in the more extensive version of the card, it will show you that it is feminine. And that is the moment that you want to do some kind of intervention. Because that just told you have a problem. The moment you get something wrong, that's like the most important, the most valuable moment is I got something in my reviews wrong. Now I can do something about it. Now I can reinforce that memory in some manner. So like, it's easy to look at your review sessions as the thing that's the right thing to do is just get them all right. Like then I'm winning. No, you're winning when you find things that are wrong, because that's identifying the holes. That's identifying where you can learn more. And if your hole is, I remembered the word, but I forgot the gender, that's the moment where you can do this kind of intervention. And this kind of intervention is that feminine and masculine is really, really vague. When you're talking about objects, like, the sky and earth, like why is the earth feminine in Spanish? Like there's no real rhyme or reason to these genders. They are abstract concepts. And so you attempting to like, I don't know, genderify each of these objects will start getting really hard. Like you can attempt to like attach, female genitalia or something to the earth. Like you can do things like that if you want, but it will start breaking down when you talk about abstract concepts. Thought. What's the gender of thought? And how do I stick a, genitalia on thought? Like it starts getting really kind of clunky. It doesn't work anywhere. And also, do you want everything to be that sexualized? Like not necessarily. And so what I tend to recommend in the book is that you choose 2 verbs that are extremely visual. These are things like feminine things catch on fire and masculine things explode into a million pieces. Or feminine things are like electric. They get hit by lightning and they have all this sort of zappiness to it. And I don't know, masculine things, they melt into a fluid. Any of these sort of like state changing verbs, these ideas of like something that is visually one thing and then turns into a different thing, or visually one thing and has something happen to it that's like really striking visually, those are good verbs to use. I tend to use really violent ones because I tend to store violence really well in my head. The idea of like a cat exploding into a million pieces is a really striking image for me. Whereas the idea of like a cat, being friendly is not as striking to me, and so it doesn't stick as well. But the idea of you deciding, hey, everything is, dancing. These things dance, like that's striking and is non-violent. So like you don't have to choose violence. You do have to choose something that's clear visually and striking visually and is uncommon visually. This is, I guess, one of the other problems about like, smiling is masculine. Like, okay, well, that's kind of subtle. Everything can kind of, like some things can kind of smile. The idea of like everything can smile, can a soccer ball smile, like gets a little wobbly. So heavy violence works pretty well, and things like moving around, dancing, hovering, flying up and down, things like that. Once you've chosen these things, let's say I choose that like getting hit by lightning is feminine and exploding into a million pieces is masculine. Then the moment I get a flashcard wrong, I now have a thing I can do. So in this case, if in this example where I got tierra wrong and I thought it was masculine, but it's actually feminine, it's the idea of being like, okay, well, I got it wrong. Let's hit the earth with lightning and have it all zap. And then all the, I don't know, trees melt and all this stuff, because of the intensity of the lightning that hits the earth on all the ends. Then I mark the flashcard as wrong because I got it wrong. I do the rest of my reviews. I come back to that same flashcard at the end of my review session and I say, okay, it was tierra, and what was the gender again? And there's 2 scenarios there. One scenario is that I remember this lightning imagery and it works. And I say, okay, it's feminine, and I get it right. And the other option is that I don't remember it and I need to intensify the image. So I still use lightning, but how do I make that more vibrant? I made all the trees melt. Well, how do I, like the trees should actually be catching on fire because that's what lightning does. And like, I need to make like whatever, my favorite, Norbert gets hit by lightning and he's dead and I'm so sad and like, oh, like whatever. Like I need to start making this more intense, more emotionally intense. And that's the way I know whether to make that imagery more emotionally intense is that I got the flashcard wrong. It will almost always work your first try. It will occasionally not, and that's when you need to ramp up the intensity. And you don't, again, have to go to super intense violence, super intense, sadness, all that kind of stuff, although it is an effective tool. Bridge is asking, how do I do this? Do I do this via drawing, via image search? Neither. One of the things about mnemonics of this type is that you don't want to give yourself a clue on the front side of that flashcard, because at that point you've given yourself the answer. If I put a lightning bolt on the front side of this particular tierra flashcard, then I know it's feminine. I just told myself. I have a clue. Lightning equals feminine. I stuck it on the front side of the flashcard. When it says, what is tierra? I'm like, okay, well, I know. I already gave myself the answer. And so all of these things are mental exercises. These are things that you are storing in your head. And because in Spanish and French, it's only 2 of them, it's not a ton of information. If you had, 100 mnemonics and you had to keep track of all of them, then like, okay, you're gonna need a flashcard system to do that. But because it's just a couple, or in German's case, it's 3, you just hold on to them. You use them a couple times and they'll be ingrained long term. And so these are stories that you are imagining every time you get a flashcard wrong. And that's how you tend to use gender mnemonics. Yep, you just visualize it. Yep. Cool. Let's jump over to grammar and how you start making choices about this stuff. So, oh no, I'm locked out. I'm going to switch over to a different Spanish so that I'm not locked out of grammar. The first time you use the thing, you use this, and if you are set to an early intermediate or beginner, and you haven't made a lot of words yet, it's going to keep you out of grammar until you've made your first 20 picture flashcards. So once you push through those first 20, then it will unlock the grammar tab for you. For this particular version of Spanish, I do have that unlocked, and so I will jump into here, and I will learn. I don't want to learn verbo. Actually, here's a good opportunity. I don't want to learn verbo because I already know that word. And so you deciding I don't want to learn that is a really important moment. And for those of you who don't know, you can swipe on these words and you can select, I either know it already, so I don't want to learn it, or I don't care about it, so I just want to skip it. In this case, I know the word already, and so I'm just going to mark it as known, and it's going to mark that whole set as done. We've hit the most controversial one in our group, that idea that people will kiss each other sometimes. So I'm hitting this word besar. I want it. And so I'm not going to mark it as skip. I'm just going to tap on it and learn it. And I have the option of just learning this as a picture, but what you should generally do whenever you have a choice in the matter is learn using sentences. And in your case, you're always going to be learning with sentences because you're in MXU and you're pulling things from the MXU tab, which is going to give you sentences every single time, which is the right thing to do. Anytime you can move towards sentences, it is always the right call. That said, if you are in MXU and there's a moment where you're like, man, I really wish I knew the word for kiss, and I'm not talking to my, it's the weekend or something, or it's a vacation, and I'm not going to be able to get there, today, the idea of you going to the explore section and saying, hey, how do I say kiss? Like, what was that word again? Or I guess in this case, we use to kiss. We will have partial search at some point. It's not letting me do search. Okay. I don't know what's going on with that search today. Not beast, besar. I don't know why it's not letting me find besar. So let's look for, I don't know, something like dog. So I decide I want to learn the word dog. My coach isn't available to me today, or it's just like we already did our daily touch, and I just realized, damn, I forgot that word. I really want to get it. You jumping in and finding sentences is going to be more valuable than you jumping in and finding individual, just a picture. Sentences you always retain more than individual picture words. And so you should always sort of favor those. In this particular case, the idea of how you learn grammar generally is sort of the next main topic. How are you learning the abstract words? There was a question in one of the in the community channel about like, how do I choose images for abstract words? And so that's sort of this really, really important topic. For perro, I don't need to choose images for abstract words because this isn't an abstract word. And so I can do my whole advanced image search. I could be like, oh man, look at these different species of dogs that I wouldn't necessarily expect, although they do sort of favor the golden retrievers that I would expect. But this is a cute little stuffed animal that I think is kind of not what I would have seen otherwise. And I have a little chihuahua, and I think that's cute. And he's holding a chancleta, which I think is also cute. And so I'm going to use these two for my choice for perro. I'm going to make these vocabulary words, which is to say these fill in the blank sentences, which is how you should be learning most of your vocabulary. And in this particular case, the concept of where does perro belong in the sentence is not surprising to me. El blank es un animal doméstico is like exactly mimicking the English word order here. The dog is one animal domestic. Like that's the only thing actually that's surprising in terms of word order for someone who's new to Spanish is doméstico is in the wrong place. It's flipped. from what I would be used to from English. So in this case, I will not make a word order flashcard of where does perro belong in that sentence. Él es un animal doméstico. The idea that perro belongs in between él and es is not surprising to me, and so do not make flashcards for things that are not surprising. So I will not. But I do have interest in this word doméstico. That is not a word I've ever used in Spanish. So I want to learn the word. And I am interested in that particular word order if I were new to Spanish. And so this idea of choosing doméstico as one of these words has value. And this is where you are learning the subtleties of grammar. And doméstico, like, what does that look like? Like, that's starting to get a little abstract. And animal in this case, I know this word already, I don't want it. But doméstico, this one I want. And so, like, what is that thing? And so that thing, to me, I have two choices here. One is, can I render this in any way that actually holds onto the meaning of that word? And if so, do that. And if not, can I capture the meaning of the whole story? And so in this particular case, this idea of what is a like domestic animal, for me, that means like this animal belongs in a home. And so I want pictures of homes, because that actually captures the meaning for me. And so I'm going to jump in here, and I'm gonna search for, what is home, and I'm gonna find some houses, this house in particular, and like this is going to be my domestico. I might even make a little drawing, and I might draw a little, whatever. Here's my little house, and then here's my little dog, and there's a terrible dog. He has a little big ear, whatever. And this is the worst dog in the world, and like this is domestico for me. And that's legit. Like, that's a good choice. That's fine. But let's say I was doing something like es. Like, is doesn't look like anything. And so I'm going to learn domestico. Hopefully it will let me jump to the last one. It does not. And so, because I already knew all that word, I've already marked es as a word I know already. And so I'm going to try to learn it a second time by saying is. Es. I have 212 s's. And now we have a. Él es mi actor favorito. He is my favorite actor. What does is look like? Nothing. Is the word that allows me to tell this story that he's my favorite actor. And so these are the moments where you say, can I render this in actual images? And immediately the answer is no, you absolutely cannot. There's no way to talk about like existence in a way that fits with images very well. And so at this point, then I will look for, who is in fact my favorite actor. And I don't know, Ian McKellen, I guess I'm going to go with. And I don't even know if I'm spelling his name right. I am well enough for this. And so I'm going to grab a couple of pictures of Ian McKellen. This is what S looks like. S looks like Ian McKellen in this particular case. This is allowing me to tell the story in this particular sentence. And that's how you should be going through these things. Other chunk that this allows me to talk about, though, is also the dictionary form. The dictionary form allows you to jump back to the original conjugation of this verb. This is a form of the verb ser. And so when you are learning the sentences that are provided in the app, it will connect those as well. When you're learning the MXU sentences, you're just going to go straight to fill in the blanks. And that is okay. And when you need to learn things like said, you can talk to your coach about, can I get an example of a sentence that is personal to me and involves the word said? Like, totally legit. That's a good choice. But when you are learning things in app in terms of the more generic sentences, it will be able to test you directly on, what is the dictionary form of the word that is missing from the sentence? El blank mi actor favorito. Él es mi actor. So es is the right word. But what is the dictionary form of that? That's ser. And so it's going to quiz you on that particular concept. And that's how you're going to be making the connections that form grammar. The way you tend to learn grammar in this methodology is not, memorizing a bunch of rules. It's always connecting something to a specific story. And so, yes, there is value in you understanding things like conjugation charts. There's value in you being able to talk to your coach about, said, how do you conjugate that damn thing? Like, man, that thing's really annoying. And when do you use this instead of estar? Super interesting conversation. Have that conversation. Read articles about that topic. Do all of that, but then connect it to a specific story. Because if it's not connected to a story, if you're just like, she is, they are, you are, that's so abstract that you're not going to be able to do anything with it. It's not going to stick. And so from a retention standpoint, The most important thing is that you are taking sentences outside of your brain and you're getting them to stick inside your brain. The second most important thing is, can you understand some of the rules, connect them to a sentence, and then get that sentence to stick in your brain? But you just memorizing rules is actually kind of valueless if they're not connected to specific stories. So from a grammar standpoint, that's, I think, a really, really important kind of orientation is story, 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 maybe additional content that links to that story. Can I learn this sentence, él es mi actor favorito, and can I take that to my coach and be like, how do I say this if my coach, if this actor died, 20 years ago? How do I move that to past tense? Can you give me that sentence? Can I learn that for tomorrow? That's grammar. That's how you should be approaching grammar. So, grammar topic. That is also actually how you use outside resources, which was the next topic here. You being able to use dictionaries that are like comprehensive dictionaries that give you all sorts of cool information about the word. You using etymology books that tell you like, where did ser come from? Why did they use ser and estar? How did that happen? You reading an article about grammar topic, like all this kind of extra content is all valuable as long as you can connect it back to a story. And so when you sit, like I like to do this actually in reverse. I like to do it as error management, which is actually the next topic here. When I get flashcards wrong, that's when I will pull on external resources. So we already talked about one external resource, which is these grammar mnemonics, or these gender mnemonics. I get my gender wrong, I'm going to go start bringing in stories from this extra source, which is the extra sources. We just had this conversation about lightning and burning things and stuff like that. That's your first external source that you have. But you can have other external sources. I get, the word favorito wrong. And now I'm going to jump to, well, what else? What can I learn about this word? I got it wrong, so I clearly need to reinforce this memory. And so one way to reinforce that memory is to choose new images, for instance, and start doing this advanced image search stuff that we did before, or getting the selfie of me being like, wow, he's such an amazing actor, all that stuff. Like that's all a tool. But another tool is I can go look at an etymology book about favorito and figure out what's the history of this word. If that interests me, if I'm the kind of nerd that likes that kind of thing, it's the right choice. Do it. If you're not, if it's boring to you, don't. You can look favorito up in a dictionary and figure out how else is it used. That is another way to reinforce things using an external tool. You being surprised that it's like favorito and favorita, and being like, oh, the endings change. You jumping into a grammar book and understanding how adjective endings change. That's another way to reinforce that specific word and how those rules work. And so this is where external tools come in. For me, that tends to be an error management. I get the flashcard wrong, I go to the external tool. You can also do that from the start though, and you can say, hey, today I want to read this thing in my grammar book, and then I want to talk to my coach about it. And I want to build some personal examples that fit with this particular topic in my grammar book. Totally legit way to go about it. So either you do it in the front end or you do it in the back end. And this is where they fit in. We already talked about error management, so that's pretty solid. And I think we're getting towards the end here. Given the amount of time left, I want to jump to the most exciting one, I think. Yeah, I'll do one really quick and then I'll jump to the exciting one. The one really quick is whenever you're doing reviews in Fluent Forever, talk to yourself. You should sound like a crazy person. Don't sit there being quiet looking at your flashcards. Like read them out loud, read the target word at least out loud every time and compare it to what you're hearing. You getting used to your mouth moving. You getting used to getting this, r out of your mouth. That's where you get to actually practice this stuff. And so you building Spanish in your head where it doesn't actually connect with the things in your mouth, like that's not quite what your goal is. And so you want to keep reinforcing it, and the way you can reinforce that is by saying things out loud and then listening to recordings and seeing how they match. Janet brings up a good point. While brushing teeth, you could try, but no, that is a flaw in my teeth brushing plan. But it's a compromise that I'm making in terms of being able to build good habits. And I don't brush my teeth for the entire duration of my review session. So the second half of my review session is in fact out loud. But good catch on that front. Last chunk that I want to talk about today has to do with phonetic mnemonics, which I don't think a lot of people know about. The way phonetic mnemonics work this is another error management tool. I've got the flashcard wrong and I can't remember the word. And what do I do? How do I reinforce that thing? And for any of you who have used the pronunciation trainer within the app, what you will find is that we used a bunch of kind of out of the way words to talk about things. Album Yucateco, this idea of like a album from the Yucatec Peninsula. Like what the hell's that? Like, why are we doing that thing? And what they allow you to do is, because every one of those words is really, really concrete, it's an object that you can see and touch. You can reuse those things as reminders of various phonemes within the word. And so let's say I forgot the word favorito. And I remember that the very first time I learned the word F, it was F as in foca, seal. Then when I get favorito wrong, I can attempt to connect it to the word for seal, foca. And so what is my, foca favorito? What's my favorite seal? Like, do I have a favorite seal in my life? Can I bring foca into this discussion of él es mi actor favorito? Can I have Ian McKellen have a seal interacting with him? Is he like, playing a part? Is he doing Lord of the Rings with a seal next to him? How do I throw a seal into that story? Specifically, how do I throw a foca into that story? And can I have that remind me that the first letter of this word is F? Can I do the same thing if I get it wrong, and only if I get it wrong, can I do that with the next letter? If I let's say I see favorito and I'm like, damn, I remember it started with an F because of the foca thing, but I cannot remember the next word. And then I go to the next thing and I'm like, okay, as in, ala or something, as in wing. You can add that one as well. And you can start being, okay, now there's a seal, now there's, a wing, the seal has wings now. And so you being able to tie mnemonics to these concepts from a phoneme by phoneme basis allows you to basically give yourself clues about what does the word start with, what's the next letter in the word, things like that. And I think they're really valuable tools. It's one of the reasons why in the pronunciation trainer I go for really, really concrete objects that are kind of out of the way, is that it allows you to have a database basically in your head pre-built of objects that you can choose from, and be like, okay, well, anytime I need to remember the letter F, I can go for foca. Whereas if you chose something that was, if we used words that are extremely common or abstract, it wouldn't be quite as easy to jump to each of these things. And so, yeah, I think that's all the time we have, and those are all the best ones here anyway. So thank you all for this crazy experiment of letting me kind of delve into all the craziness of the app. I hope that was useful. I hope this wasn't, like, for those of you who are super advanced, I hope this wasn't entirely review for all of you. And yeah, thanks, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for any of you staying on.
Thank you very much, Gabe. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good week, and see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.